Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Good for you to have kept it strictly professional, OP. Your earlier way of feeling that your job was a part of your family and you wanted to give your all went on deaf ears, and they believed they could dismiss your efforts on their behalf as what you did and didn't appreciate that it was above and beyond. Leave, no leave, yes, leave. A bit of background. I work as the sole IT guy in a firm with about 75 people that's part of a larger nationwide mother firm. Our local firm has an ongoing agreement with another local firm that we play backup for each other in case either one needs help or backup or knowledge sharing or whatever. This has been the case since 2009. I worked for this firm since 2002. Kind of an old hand, if you want. We have this generous leave package that builds the longer we work here. A starter has 180 hours per year leave. Someone with 20 plus years has 240 hours. I have that. Now, because we have this much leave, I'm of a mind not to be too strict with when and how. I'm single and have no kids, so I'm happy to let others with kids take priority to handle school holidays. As such, the last 15-something years, I've always taken the bulk of my leave in September and October, and the rest on Fridays, counting back from New Year, if that makes sense. The only rules we have regarding when and how we take leave is no more than 6 weeks together, you can't transfer more than 7 days to the next year, and leave must be approved, which it almost always is. Enter my big boss. As per usual, I put in my leave request for September/October somewhere in May. This gets approved. Around August, we get news from our hardware vendor that they will be installing our new service cluster at the end of September. Not cool, but what are you going to do? I talk it over with Big Boss and agree to move my leave to February/March of the next year. I don't mind too much. He's happy. I'm happy. We go ahead and plan it all in. Enter my department head. Since I'm a one-man department, but core are going to be core, I have a department head that oversees my department along with a few others. Somewhere end of September, her walks into my office and tells me when I'm planning to take the bulk of my leave. I tell him about the service cluster install and that my leave is moved to February/March. Now, one cannot be department head or department of manglement and still be reasonable, right? So he tells me that since I won't be taking my leave in this year, it will be forfeit. I tell him I have an agreement with Big Boss, to which he states that he talked about it with Big Boss and that the arrangement won't work since he didn't approve it. I take my phone and call Big Boss. He states that indeed my leave will not be approved and can't be moved to next year. So I tell him okay. Enter Malicious Compliance. I was pissed, not just angry, but genuinely ready to murder someone pissed. So I took a half day and went home and mulled things over. With age comes wisdom, and I know not to take decisions when I'm that angry. Next day, I go in and ask a leave statement from our HR department that has a counter of all our leave and, more important, overtime. I had around 700 hours overtime standing, accrued over the years, and 220 hours leave. So I put in 5 weeks leave, 1 week, 1 overtime, 5 weeks leave, 1 week overtime, and so on till I landed in the first week of January. Then I put in the remaining overtime and landed in the end of February. Next to that, I sent in my resignation and 3 months' notice, which I planned exactly on the last day of my leave. Not half an hour later, my big boss and department head are at my desk asking me what gives. I told them since department head had told me I couldn't transfer the leave, I would be taking it this year, and since the agreement to move my leave was broken, I felt I didn't have another choice but to look for other work where agreements in fact were honored. I asked them what rule of the worker's manual regarding leave I'd broken, and if any, could they point it out? After that talk, I went home and the waiting game began. Big Boss called me next morning on my work cell asking me to come in. Sorry, nope, I'm on leave. Happy to make a pot of coffee if you want to drop by. So he drops by. Things get talked about. Seems his department head wasn't entirely upfront with him, although he wasn't innocent either, and he wants to make things right. My 6 months leave stayed in place, and he offered to match the offers I would get from other firms to keep me on board, within reason. Conclusion. All in all now, I still work for the same firm with a 15% wage increase. I don't do overtime anymore, neither does my laptop come home with, and my work phone stays at work too. I still do my job to the best of my abilities, but at the end of the day, if my hours are done, I go home. The building can be on fire. If my clock is out, I'm out the door. Now my leave gets planned around my preference too. No more shifting around other people's leaves. In regards to people asking how leave is counted, it's per hour. We work 35 hours per week. The 5-1-5-1-5-1 arrangement was a systematic example. Of course, I didn't have enough leave to fill the gap, but with roughly 700 hours overtime, I had about 26 weeks. So yeah, it was more like 5-1-3-1-1-1-1-1. But I can see how this got confusing. How so much overtime? Basically, overtime could be infinitely transferred to the next year as long as no one complains. And as most of you will know, in the IT sector, it's really easy to work too much hours. This has changed recently because of issues that arose from it. And the lesson is, don't mess with somebody that holds a ton of knowledge and can't easily be replaced. And our second story. Lady snatches Dinosaur model out of my hands. So I was heading to a toy store, name redacted for privacy's sake, because they'd informed me that they had the new Malicious model made by Safari Limited. I didn't have that model in my collection, and I usually order my models there, and I have a good enough relationship with the store's workers to let me know when a certain model on my list is available, or sometimes I prepay them to have a certain item in stock, and they have always provided. So I go into the store wearing a red shirt, because I felt like it, and normally the toy store workers wear red, but they have tags on. So you know where this is going. So I enter the store and ask if they have this Malicious, and they point me in the right direction, since in this case it wasn't one of the models I prepaid them for. So I see the Malicious among other models, it wasn't the only one, and I get my hands on it. When I take it off the shelf, a lady says to me, "Oh, thank you, I can take it from here." I turn around and see that this lady looks like she's in her late 30s holding out her hand to me, expecting me to just plop the dinosaur in her hands. I was looking confused for a moment, and then she got frustrated and asked me if I was hard of hearing. I asked why she wanted me to hand over the model I wanted, and she asked what I meant. I was an employee. I suddenly got her assumption and told her that no, I don't work here. I was just a customer. She fumed and pointed out that I was wearing the same shade of red as the workers. I responded that red is not exclusive to this store, and if she would excuse me, I was going to purchase this Malicious. She then got intrusive and started asking why would an adult collect dinosaur models. I responded that people are allowed to have hobbies and tried to move on. Apparently not satisfied with my answer, she blocked me and freaking snatched the Malicious out of my hand and went to the counter. I was about to shrug my shoulders and grab the spares, not wanting to escalate, until I realized that she had also taken the other Malicious models on the shelf. The other remaining models were of Brachiosaurus and Microraptor, by the way. A little bit infuriated at this, but keeping my calm, I went to the counter and asked her to give it back and told the people at the counter that she had snatched the model out of my hands. They asked her if it was true, and she actually told the truth, but only because I was being a bad employee, lying about wanting the model for myself and not providing good customer service. Now, the counter workers who'd seen me enough times as a consistent buyer pointed out to the lady that I wasn't a worker, and she got huffy. She then said that she was the proper purchaser because she was getting them for her kid, while an adult shouldn't be playing with toys, that maybe if I wasn't collecting them, I would properly become an adult. So one of the counter workers called the store owner, who came to ask what was going on. After explaining, he had a frown on his face and went to check the security footage. After seeing that she had snatched it out of my hands and had escalated the situation, he ordered her to give me my Safari model or he would have her ousted from the store. Now, the store owner's a big guy, so she withered under his gaze a bit and gave me my Safari. I calmly thanked her. I didn't really want to have to deal with her any further, and the store people, but I will admit I did enjoy seeing her crumple at the sight of a very annoyed burly guy, and now I have a Malicious in my collection. I hate to see how her kids will turn out with a mother like this supposedly teaching them manners. Grabbing something out of another person's hands is rude and belligerent on her part. Like she deserves the item and no one else does. And our next story. You have to put a winter coat on them. I have 3 little kids still in car seats. Whenever the temperature drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius, my wife insists that when I get the kids to school in the morning, they have to wear a winter coat. Now, that isn't that big of a problem, I just send it with them. She's learned of this and is insistent that I put the coats on the kids when I walk them to the car. The car is in the driveway, it's 10 feet away. They aren't going to die of hypothermia in the 10 seconds it takes for me to walk from the door to the car. What's even worse is that you cannot put kids in car seats with heavy coats on, so that means I put the coats on them, then stand outside the car in the cold and take their coats off when we get into the car. It's stupid, but she insists, and since she's gone before we even get ready in the morning, she just asks the kids. So this morning she stayed home and told me she'd help in the morning. It's 36 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 degrees Celsius out right now, so winter coats, hats, and gloves. When she asked what she could do to help, I told her just put the kids in the car and I'll handle everything else. So I dressed them to the nines, heavy coat, gloves, hats, scarves, just to make sure they weren't cold at all. Then I asked her to take the 3 kids out. Now, she was planning on working on some college stuff this morning and was wearing her fleece pajama pants and nightshirt. She was going to get right back in bed after getting them in the car. And since the car's just a few feet outside, she didn't throw on a jacket and walk them out. She came back about 5 minutes later complaining about how she stood outside the car longer to take their coats, mittens, hats, and scarves off than it took her to get to the car. Yup. Welcome to my world where a 10-second job has now become 5 minutes because of your insane rule. And our last story. HOA is trying to evict us because we have a child. So a little backstory. We moved in about a month ago to some condos in Michigan. The day before we moved in, the community posted all around the building that they were switching to a child-free community, illegal because it isn't a 55-plus community. Our landlord called and told them they were breaking the law if they wouldn't allow us to move in, Fair Housing Act. The community around us is completely against us being here because we have a child and we've had 3 noise complaints. I'm sure it was all coordinated within their little tight-knit community to get us and our child out. I've been randomly running a sound meter on my phone throughout the day and we rarely go above 70 decibels, and when we do, it's barely over 70 decibels. Our toddler's in bed every night at 8:30 to 9 p.m., I've took screenshots of all our sound meter recordings, and I've started a nice chart that goes over our max decibel, average decibel, time the sound meter was ran, and the date it was ran. On average, our decibel reading over the last 4 days was between 31.6 and 47 decibels. I'm 99% sure they're just discriminating against us because we have a toddler. Edit. It's put my mind at ease for now, knowing there's not a whole lot they can do here. From my understanding, the community has no intention of switching to a 55-plus community. They have a family on the 3rd story that have kids in their teen years. They just don't like the idea of a toddler living here in the condos. It's unfortunate that you're facing such challenges in your new community. Discrimination based on having a child is against the Fair Housing Act, and it's good that your landlord is aware of this and has communicated it to the community. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.